Hi everyone. Before we dive in, a quick favor. If you enjoy content like this, please hit the subscribe button. It's free, supports the channel, and makes sure you never miss out on amazing videos. All right, let's get started. Hey guys. So, I've been sitting on this for a while, trying to wrap my head around everything. Honestly, I'm not the type to post personal stuff like this, but I feel like I need to get it off my chest. It's been a few weeks since this all went down. And even though I know I made the right decision, it still feels unreal. I was engaged to someone I thought I'd spend my life with, but one night changed everything. Let me explain. My name's Melba. I'm 29, and I work in IT. I've always been pretty chill, maybe even too much. I don't like drama or making a big deal out of things. I'd rather talk stuff out and move on. You know, Nikki, my ex-fiancé, was the opposite. He's 27, works in marketing, and is the kind of person who thrives on energy. He's charismatic, super outgoing, and loves being the center of attention. When we first got together, his fiery personality was one of the things I loved about him. He was passionate, determined, and had this confidence that made you believe he could take on the world. Over time, though, I started noticing that his passion sometimes crossed a line into stubbornness. There were little red flags I ignored, like the time we went to a dinner party with my coworkers, and he made a comment about how I could have dressed better in front of everyone, laughing like it was a joke, or how he always had to pick the restaurant when we went out. And if I suggested something different, he'd either roll his eyes or say, "Well, I guess you don't care if I enjoy dinner." At first, I thought it was just him being particular, but it started to feel like things always had to go his way. It became clear that if he wanted something, he wouldn't back down until he got it. I brushed it off for the most part because, well, no one's perfect. Fast forward 4 years, and we're engaged. Wedding planning was intense, to say the least. Nikki wanted this massive Pinterest-perfect wedding with over 200 guests, an elaborate venue, and God knows how many floral arrangements. I, on the other hand, wanted something smaller, intimate, and manageable. We weren't rolling in money, and I didn't see the point of blowing our savings on a single day. But every time I brought up my concerns, it turned into a fight. He'd accuse me of not caring about the wedding or not wanting to put in the effort. I tried to explain that I wasn't against the wedding. I just wanted us to be realistic. It wasn't just about the guest list either. Every detail had to meet his exact vision. I remember one time he spent 2 hours debating with the florist about the color of the centerpieces, only to snap at me when I suggested we go with something simpler. "If you're not going to take this seriously, why are you even here?" he said, completely ignoring the fact that I'd left work early to make it to that appointment. It wasn't about compromising. It was about him winning. Then came that night. We were in the living room, buried under the chaos of wedding planning. Papers were scattered everywhere, sticky notes clinging to random surfaces, and a big binder stuffed to the brim sat open on the coffee table. Nikki had spent months assembling that thing, and now it looked like it was holding his sanity together by a thread. He was pacing back and forth, his words tumbling out in an endless rant about finalizing the guest list. He was fixated on inviting a sea of distant relatives I couldn't even begin to place. Cousins thrice removed, their kids, their plus ones. It felt absurd. I sat on the couch watching him whirl around the room like a storm, trying to find the right moment to speak. "Nikki," I said cautiously, "do we really need to invite people we barely know? Shouldn't this be about the people closest to us?" He stopped mid-step, slowly turning to face me. His eyes were sharp, his posture stiff. "Why don't you take this seriously, Melba? Do you even care about this wedding?" That question hit like a punch to the gut. I felt the tension in my chest rise, but I forced myself to stay calm. "Of course I care," I said evenly. "But it's not about how many people are there or how extravagant it is. It's about us, about starting our life together." His expression darkened and his voice rose. "You just don't get it. This isn't about us. It's about celebrating what we have with the people who've been there for our families. This is supposed to be the most important day of our lives, and you're treating it like a business transaction." "It's not that," I said, struggling to keep my frustration in check. "I just think we need to be realistic. We can't afford to invite half the state. That's not what's going to make the day special." His laugh was short and bitter. "Realistic? You mean cheap, right? You don't care about making this day memorable. You just care about the price tag." "Nikki, come on," I said, my voice tightening. "That's not fair. I'm trying to keep us from going into debt over this. Isn't that what matters? Starting our marriage on solid ground?" You always do this, he snapped, stepping closer. His tone was sharp enough to cut. You make me feel like I'm ridiculous for wanting something beautiful. Why do I even bother trying to make this special when you clearly don't care? I stood up, my frustration boiling over. Don't put words in my mouth. I care. But I'm not going to pretend throwing money at it will make it better. This is supposed to be about love, not putting on a show for people we barely know. He was trembling now, his face flushed, his hands balled into fists at his sides. You're impossible, he said through gritted teeth. You don't hear me. You never hear me. His voice cracked, and for a second I thought the tension might break into something softer, maybe a chance to de-escalate. But then he closed the distance between us, his movements abrupt and determined. Nikki, let's just... Before I could finish, his hand came down hard across my face. The slap echoed in the silence that followed, leaving a sharp sting on my cheek and an even deeper one in the pit of my stomach. For a second, I just stood there, stunned. I've never been in a situation like that before, and it felt like time froze. My cheek was burning, but it wasn't the pain that got to me. It was the sheer disbelief. This was someone I loved, someone I was supposed to marry, and he had just crossed a line I never thought he would. I stared at him, my mind racing to process what had just happened. His expression shifted immediately from fury to shock, his mouth opened slightly, his face pale. Melba, he whispered, his voice shaky and unsteady. I didn't mean to. I swear I didn't. I couldn't speak for a moment. I could feel my chest rising and falling as I fought to keep my composure. Looking back, there had been moments leading up to this, little verbal jabs when he didn't get his way, or how every disagreement escalated until I was the one who brushed it off to keep the relationship. This wasn't a one-off. It was the boiling point of something that had been simmering for a long time. Finally, I stood up, slow, deliberate, and met his eyes with a calmness that surprised even me. Pack your things, I said, my voice quiet but unyielding. His eyes widened, and he took a half step back, his hands clutching each other. What? Melba, wait! No, I didn't mean it. You have to believe me. I wasn't thinking. I was just so... Stop, I interrupted, holding up my hand. I don't care what your excuse is. You put your hands on me, Nikki. That's not something I'm ever going to tolerate. Get your stuff and get out. He started crying, pleading with me to let him explain, but I wasn't having it. There's nothing to explain, I said firmly. You crossed a line and I'm done. Pack your things and go. He tried to argue, but I wasn't going to let him guilt me into backing down. I stood there, arms crossed, watching as he grabbed his wallet and some of his things. His hands were shaking, and he kept looking at me like he was expecting me to change my mind, but I didn't. When he finally left, the house felt eerily quiet. I sat back down on the couch, staring at the wedding binder and the mess of papers he'd left behind, realizing that I had just ended a 4-year relationship in the span of 15 minutes. And the craziest part, I wasn't even angry anymore. The next morning, I woke up to my phone buzzing nonstop. Calls, texts, notifications. It felt like the whole world wanted to know what was going on. Nikki must have told a few people, and it spread like wildfire. I decided to start dealing with the fallout. First, I called my parents. My mom answered right away, her voice bright and cheery, like she was expecting a wedding update. Melba, how's it going? Did you and Nikki finally decide on the cake? I took a deep breath. Mom, there's no cake. There's no wedding. I broke it off. She didn't say anything. For a moment, I thought the call had dropped. Then she said, You what? In that tone only a mother can pull off, equal parts shock and disappointment. Look, it's a long story, I said, but it's over. Nikki's out of the house, and I'm calling off the wedding. She didn't take it well. Melba, this is a huge deal. People are expecting a wedding. Do you realize how embarrassing this will be for everyone involved? Mom, I cut in. He crossed the line. More silence. Then she softened. Oh, honey, are you okay? I'm fine, I replied, but I'm not marrying someone who thinks that's acceptable. That seemed to click for her. She let out a long sigh and said, I get it. I don't like it, but I get it. I'll tell your father. Do you need anything? No, I'm good. Just maybe give me some space for a bit. She agreed, though I could hear the worry in her voice. After hanging up, I moved on to the next task, canceling the wedding. I started with the venue. The woman on the other end was polite but hesitant when I told her we wouldn't be moving forward. "I'm sorry to hear that," she said. "We'll need to discuss the deposit." "Keep it," I said. "I don't care." Then there was the photographer, the caterer, and the DJ. Each call felt like ripping off a bandage. By the time I was done, I was mentally drained. That's when the texts from Nikki started pouring in. At first, they were apologetic, long paragraphs about how he was sorry, how he didn't mean to slap me, how stress had overwhelmed him. Then they shifted to anger. "I can't believe you'd throw away 4 years over one mistake," he wrote. "You're being so dramatic." By the end of the day, they were a mix of desperation and guilt-tripping. "You're ruining my life," he texted. "Everyone's asking me what happened, and I don't know what to say." I didn't respond to any of it. What was there to say? He knew what he'd done. Things got worse when mutual friends started reaching out. Some were supportive. My friend Natalie called to check on me. "Girl, I heard what happened. Are you okay?" "Yeah," I said, "just dealing with the fallout." "You did the right thing," she told me. "No one should have to put up with that." Others weren't so understanding. Nikki's friend Taylor, for instance, decided to take his side. She started posting vague but pointed comments on social media, stuff like, "Some people can't handle a strong, independent man," or, "Imagine being so fragile you ruin a relationship over nothing." She didn't tag me directly, but it was obvious who she was talking about. It didn't bother me as much as it should have. If anything, it was just annoying. I didn't care what Taylor thought of me. What did bother me, though, was how Nikki's parents reacted. His mom called me the day after I ended things, her voice shaky and full of guilt. "Melba, please don't do this," she said. "Nikki's been under so much stress. He didn't mean to hurt you." "I'm sorry," I replied, "but there's no coming back from this. I can't marry someone who thinks it's okay to lay hands on me, no matter the reason." "He's devastated," his mom said. "He loves you. Can't you give him another chance?" "No," I said firmly. "I've made my decision." His dad called later that evening, but his tone was colder. "I don't know what happened," he said, "but this is going to reflect badly on both of you. People will talk, Melba. Are you ready for that?" I almost laughed. "With all due respect, sir, I'm more concerned with my personal boundaries than what people might say." He hung up shortly after, clearly unimpressed. By the end of the week, it felt like I'd been put through the ringer. I wasn't sad or heartbroken, just exhausted. The emotional weight of dealing with everyone's opinions was heavier than I'd expected. Then came the rumors. Someone, probably Taylor, started spreading word that I'd overreacted and that Nikki was the real victim. A few mutual acquaintances reached out to hear my side, which was their polite way of saying they didn't believe me. "She said she was just stressed," one person texted. "You didn't have to kick him out, did you?" I ignored the message. I didn't owe anyone an explanation. Despite all the noise, I felt lighter without Nikki in my life. The house was quieter, yes, but it was also peaceful, and there was space to breathe without arguments and tantrums. Still, something about the whole situation didn't sit right with me. Nikki's reaction to the breakup felt off. Sure, he was upset, but his focus seemed less on what he'd done and more on how I'd responded. The way he tried to paint himself as the victim didn't make sense, especially since he was the one who crossed the line. I started wondering if there was more to the story. Was the slap really just a moment of stress, or was there something deeper going on? It wasn't like him to lose control like that. That nagging thought stayed with me until I met up with Lauren, a mutual friend who always seemed to know what was really going on. I wasn't expecting much, but what she told me changed everything. She called me up one afternoon, sounding hesitant, which was rare for her. Lauren isn't the type to hold back. She's blunt, and that's one of the reasons I've always trusted her. "Hey, Melba," she started. "Can we talk? I think there's something you should know about everything." I could tell by her tone this wasn't going to be good. "What's up?" I asked, trying to sound casual, even though I felt a knot forming in my stomach. She paused for a moment, then said, "Not over the phone. Can we meet in person?" I agreed, but my mind was already racing. I hung up and sat there for a while, staring at the wall, wondering what she could possibly have to tell me. Whatever it was, I had a feeling it was going to put the last few weeks into perspective. I spent the rest of the day going about my business, but my focus was shot. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Nikki's reaction to everything, the way his friends and even his parents were trying to spin the situation, it didn't add up. He wasn't just sorry for what he did. He was desperate to control the narrative. And that desperation, it reeked of guilt. I started replaying everything in my head, trying to piece together the bigger picture. Nicky wasn't some loose cannon. He was calculated, always thinking 3 steps ahead. That slap wasn't just him losing his temper. It felt intentional, like he wanted me to react. But why? Then there was the way he'd been blowing up my phone. At first, it was all apologies and tears. But when I didn't respond, it turned into anger and blame. One of his texts stuck with me. "You're making this way bigger than it needs to be. Just talk to me and we can fix it." Fix what exactly? I hadn't done anything wrong. The more I thought about it, the more it felt like he was projecting, like there was something he was hiding, and he needed me to stay in the dark. By the time I met up with Lauren, I was ready to get some answers. We met at a little cafe downtown, one of those places that's always packed, but somehow manages to feel cozy. Lauren was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth with a coffee in front of her. She looked up as I walked in, and the expression on her face told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't going to be a casual chat. I slid into the booth across from her and gave her a nod. "All right, Lauren, spill it." She hesitated, which wasn't like her. "Look," she said, "I didn't want to get involved, but after everything that's happened, I feel like you need to know." "Know what?" I asked, leaning back in my seat and crossing my arms. She sighed. "It's about Nicky and Jan." Hearing that name made my jaw tighten. Jan. That woman again. My stomach twisted at the sound of Jan's name. She wasn't a stranger, not exactly, but she wasn't someone I'd ever worried about either. "What about her?" I asked carefully, my voice sharper than I intended. Lauren glanced around the cafe, as if making sure no one was eavesdropping. Then she leaned forward, her tone lowering. "A friend of mine was at a bar a few weeks ago. She saw Nicky there, with Jan. They weren't just hanging out, they were holding hands, kissing, acting like a couple." For a moment, everything inside me went still. The noise of the cafe faded, replaced by the dull roar of blood rushing in my ears. "Are you sure?" I asked, though I already knew she wouldn't have brought this up if she wasn't. Lauren nodded. She even took a picture, but she didn't know if she should show it. She didn't want to stir up drama. "Drama?" I let out a dry laugh, shaking my head. "This whole situation is drama. Let me see the picture." She hesitated, then pulled out her phone, scrolling until she found it. She slid the device across the table to me, and there it was. A grainy photo, blurry from motion, but clear enough to recognize both faces. Nicky's arm wrapped around Jan's waist, her hand resting on his chest, their lips pressed together. I stared at it, feeling a strange mix of anger and clarity. "Well," I said finally, sliding the phone back toward her, "that explains a lot." "Melba, I'm sorry," Lauren said softly. "I didn't know if I should tell you, but after everything, I couldn't keep it to myself." I shook my head. "Don't apologize. You didn't do anything wrong." "You okay?" she asked, searching my face. I nodded, too calm. "Oh, I'm fine. Better than fine, actually. At least now I know the truth." The truth was, I wasn't surprised. Somewhere deep down, I'd known something wasn't right for a while. Nicky had been acting weird for months. Distracted, defensive, picking fights over nothing. I'd chalked it up to wedding stress, but now it all made sense. He wasn't just stressed, he was guilty. And that slap? That wasn't just a moment of frustration. That was him trying to bait me, to give him an excuse to flip the script and make me the bad guy. He didn't want to be the one to end things because that would make him the villain. So instead, he pushed me until I snapped, or at least until he thought I would. But I hadn't snapped. I didn't give him the satisfaction. I stayed calm. I told him to pack his things and leave. And now, with Lauren's information, I knew I'd done exactly the right thing. I sat there in the cafe for a while after she left, sipping my coffee, turning everything over in my mind. I wasn't going to confront Nicky right away. No, I wanted to see how he would react when I didn't take the bait. He'd been trying to control the narrative since the breakup, painting himself as the victim and me as the unreasonable fiancé who couldn't handle the pressure. But now I had the upper hand, and I wasn't about to let him spin his lies any longer. By the time I got home, I had a plan. I preferred to do this face-to-face on my terms, so I sent him a text. "We need to talk. Meet me at my place tomorrow at 7 p.m. He responded within minutes. "Finally. I've been waiting for you to reach out. I knew you'd realize you overreacted." I didn't bother replying. Let him think what he wanted. Tomorrow he was going to see just how wrong he was. The next day, just before 7 p.m., I cleared my living room. The coffee table, usually cluttered with work papers, was empty except for a single printed photo sitting right in the center. Everything about the space was intentional, calm, controlled, deliberate. Nikki thrived in chaos, in shouting matches and emotional outbursts. But that wasn't my game. I was setting the terms. At exactly 7:00, there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find him standing there, dressed in a shirt I recognized immediately. It was the one he wore on our 3rd anniversary, back when things were good. He'd paired it with cologne and his most disarming smile. The effort was obvious. He stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, his shoes tapping against the floor. "I'm glad you reached out," he said smoothly. "I knew you'd come to your senses." I didn't answer. Instead, I motioned toward the couch. He hesitated when he saw the photo on the table, his smile faltering slightly. "What's this?" I leaned against the wall, arms crossed. The room was silent, except for the faint rustle of paper as he picked up the picture. His hands stiffened, his voice wavered. "Where did you get this?" "Does it matter?" I asked evenly. He looked up, his confident demeanor cracking. "It's not what it looks like." "Then why don't you explain it to me?" He hesitated, gears turning as he scrambled for the right lie. Finally, he forced a hollow laugh. "Melba, this is ridiculous. Jan is just a friend. Someone must have misunderstood what they saw." I stayed where I was, my face calm, my stance unshifting. Silence stretched uncomfortably until he broke eye contact, glancing down at the picture again. "Melba," he tried again, his voice softer now, almost pleading. "I know this looks bad, but I swear." "Stop!" The word cut sharp, slicing through the air. "Don't waste my time. We both know what this is. So why don't you drop the act and tell me the truth for once?" His shoulders slumped slightly. For the first time, he looked unsure. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter. "Fine, yes, I was with Jan. But it wasn't serious. I didn't mean for it to go anywhere." I pushed off the wall, taking a step closer. "It wasn't serious?" My tone was ice. "Then what was it? A hobby? A stress reliever? Explain it to me, because I want to know how cheating on your fiancé fits into your grand plan." His lips trembled, but he quickly masked it with defensiveness. I was overwhelmed. The wedding, the planning, everything. I felt like I was drowning. And Jan, she was just there when I needed someone to talk to. "Talk to?" I gestured toward the photo on the table. "You call that talking?" He looked in a way, unable to meet my gaze. "I didn't mean to hurt you," he whispered. "No," I said, taking another step closer. "You just didn't care enough not to." His head snapped up, anger and guilt warring in his eyes. "That's not fair. I made a mistake, okay? But you weren't exactly perfect either. You were so distant, so focused on budgets and logistics. You didn't even notice how stressed I was." I tilted my head, unfazed by his attempt to shift blame. "And that stress justified lying? Sneaking around? Slapping me?" His face flushed, his mouth opening, but no words came out. He wasn't used to being cornered like this, to having no room to wriggle out. "I get it now," I continued, my voice steady. "The slap wasn't just a moment of anger, was it? You wanted me to react. You wanted an excuse to end this without taking responsibility. Am I wrong?" His silence spoke louder than anything he could have said. "You wanted me to lose my cool," I said, leaning slightly closer. "But I didn't, and that's why you're here now, scrambling to salvage whatever narrative you thought you could control." "Melba, please," he said finally, his voice breaking, eyes glistening. "I messed up. I know I did, but we can fix this. I'll do whatever it takes." I straightened, stepping back. "Fix what, Nikki? The trust? The respect? You think those things just snap back into place? No. This isn't something you fix. This is who you are, and I'm not interested in being part of it." He shot up from the couch, his voice rising. "So that's it? You're just going to throw everything away? 4 years, Melba? 4 years? And you're walking away over one mistake?" "This wasn't one mistake," I said, my voice low but firm. "This was a series of choices. You chose to cheat. You chose to lie. You chose to cross the line when I didn't give you the reaction you wanted. This isn't me throwing anything away. This is me walking away from someone who already did." Tears spilled down his face as he reached for me. I stepped back, shaking my head. "Don't. You don't get to play the victim here, not after everything you've done." He froze, hand hanging midair, before letting it drop. The fight in his eyes was gone. He knew he'd lost. "Get out," I said quietly, pointing to the door. His lips quivered as he whispered, "Melba." "Out!" I snapped, my voice sharper this time. He grabbed his coat and wallet, pausing only to look at me one last time. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice breaking. I didn't respond. The door closed behind him, leaving me in silence. After that confrontation, I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. After that confrontation, I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. Whatever lingering feelings I'd had for Nicky were gone, evaporated the second he confirmed every suspicion I'd been too cautious to fully trust. I didn't need closure, because I'd just given it to myself. But life has a funny way of keeping the show going. A couple of weeks passed, and I started to feel like myself again. The house was mine again, not just physically, but emotionally. It was quieter, cleaner, and most importantly, peaceful. I got back into my routine, focused on work, and even reconnected with a few friends I'd neglected during the relationship. That's when the first cracks in Nicky's new life started to appear. I hadn't heard much about him since he left, and I wasn't actively looking for updates. But mutual friends have a way of keeping you in the loop, whether you want to be or not. Natalie, my best friend and an absolute vault of information, called me one evening with that tone she gets when she's trying not to laugh too hard. "Girl," she said, barely able to contain herself, "you are not going to believe this." "What?" I asked, bracing for something ridiculous. "Nicky moved in with Jan." I raised an eyebrow. "Wow, that didn't take long." "Oh, it gets better," she said, her voice bubbling with glee. "He moved in with her, and then she dumped him, hard." Now that got my attention. "What do you mean, dumped him?" "I mean, she kicked him out, Melba. Apparently he's been staying with his parents ever since. Word is she caught him cheating on her, too." I blinked. "Wait, he cheated on Jan?" Natalie laughed. "Yep, with some woman from his gym. Apparently they'd been hooking up for weeks. Jan found out and threw his stuff out on the lawn." I couldn't help it. I laughed. Not just a chuckle, but a full-on, can't-catch-my-breath laugh. Karma doesn't always work quickly, but when it does, it's poetic. "Do you have proof?" I asked, half joking. "Oh, honey, I've got more than proof," Natalie said. "One of Jan's neighbors recorded it. The video's online." Within seconds, she sent me the link. I tapped it, and there it was. A grainy clip of Jan tossing garbage bags full of Nicky's belongings onto the grass, while he stood there, red-faced, yelling at her. She didn't say much, just pointed at his car and shouted something about calling the cops if he didn't leave. It was a mess, a perfect karmic mess. I shook my head, half in disbelief and half in satisfaction. Guess he's not as smooth as he thinks he is. "That's an understatement," Natalie said. "Everyone's talking about it. Even his little social media crew is turning on him. Taylor hasn't posted a single thing defending him since it happened." Taylor, Nicky's so-called best friend, had been one of the loudest voices trashing me online after the breakup. She'd posted all kinds of vague, passive-aggressive nonsense about fragile women and how real men intimidate the weak. I'd ignored it because engaging with her wasn't worth my time. "Figures," I said. "Taylor's all about appearances. She's not going to stick her neck out for him if it makes her look bad." "Exactly," Natalie replied. "Anyway, just thought you'd want to know. Karma's doing its thing." We wrapped up the call, and I spent the rest of the evening replaying the video a couple more times, each time feeling a little less guilty for enjoying it. The days that followed were interesting, to say the least. I started hearing from more mutual friends, most of them either apologizing for doubting me or trying to dig for details about what had happened between me and Nicky. I kept it short and simple. He crossed a line. I ended it. That's all there is to it. The truth is, I didn't feel the need to explain myself anymore. People could think what they wanted. The ones who mattered knew the truth, and the rest, well, not my problem. For now, I just wanted to clear my head from all this mess. But I had a feeling Nicky wasn't going to move on quietly. And I was right. A few months later, I was curled up on my couch halfway through a documentary when there was a knock at the door. It was late, close to 10 p.m., and I wasn't expecting anyone. When I opened the door, I froze. There he was, Nicky. He looked rough. His hair was messy, his eyes puffy, his clothes wrinkled like he hadn't bothered to put himself together. His usual cologne was gone, replaced by the sour smell of desperation. "Melba," he said, his voice shaky. "Please, I need to talk to you." I didn't even let him finish. "No," I said flatly, moving to shut the door. "Wait," he cried, his hand pressing against the frame. "Please, just hear me out. I've been thinking about everything, and I know I messed up, but I've changed. I need you to know that." I stared at him, my hand still on the door. "Nicky, I don't know what part of we're done you didn't understand, but nothing you say is going to change that." His eyes welled up. "I know I hurt you, okay? I know I screwed up, but I've been going to therapy, journaling, working on myself. I've been trying to fix everything I ruined." I shook my head. "Good for you, but that's not my problem anymore." His tears spilled freely now. "Melba, please, I love you. I never stopped loving you. I didn't know how to handle things back then. I got lost." I let out a short, sharp laugh that made him flinch. "Lost? You didn't get lost, Nikki. You made choices. You cheated, you lied, and you slapped me. None of that was an accident, and none of it was my fault. So don't stand here acting like I owe you anything." "Can't we just talk?" he begged, his hands clasped together like he was praying. "No," I said firmly. "We have nothing to talk about. Whatever you think we had, it's over. It's been over since the moment you decided to betray me." His face crumpled, and for a second I thought he might collapse right there on my porch. "Melba," he whispered, his voice barely audible, "I don't have anyone else." I stepped back, tightening my grip on the door. "That's not my fault, and it's not my responsibility to fix." I pushed the door closed, but he stopped it with his hand again. "Please," he said desperately, "just give me a chance. I'll do whatever it takes. I'll prove to you that I've changed." I sighed, leaning against the doorframe. "Nikki, you don't get it, do you? This isn't about whether you've changed or not. It's about the fact that I don't trust you anymore. You broke something that can't be fixed, and no amount of therapy or promises is going to change that." His hand dropped. He stepped back, shoulders slumping. For a moment, he just stood there staring at the ground. Then he looked up at me, eyes red and swollen. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice cracking, "for everything." I nodded once. "Good, now go." I didn't wait for him to respond. I closed the door, locked it, and walked away without looking back. Through the window, I saw him standing on the porch for a few more minutes before he finally left. And that was it. No dramatic ending, no last-minute arguments, just a clean break. Honestly, I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no regret. It was like a weight I didn't even realize I was carrying had been lifted. People like Nikki don't change overnight. Maybe he'll figure himself out one day. But that's not my problem. And I'm not about to let him back in just because he's finally realizing what he lost. For me, self-respect isn't negotiable. And once someone shows you who they really are, you don't give them the chance to do it again.